Introduction to Raspberry Pi. So these are all the contents that we are going to discuss in this session. Why the name Raspberry Pi? What is Raspberry Pi actually and its specifications, basic architecture of Raspberry Pi and the features of Raspberry Pi. So before getting into what is Raspberry Pi, why the name is chosen as Raspberry Pi, you should know that. So it is reference to a fruit naming tradition to the microcomputers in the early days. A lot of computer companies were named after fruit. The well-known example is Apple Computers. And some of other computer companies are Tangerine Computer Systems, Apricot Computers, Akron, etc. So which are all the family of fruits. So in order to pay homage to these computer companies, the another fruit name, raspberry, has kept for this new invention of microcomputer. So the figure shows what is Raspberry Pi. And the Pi stands for Python. So we are going to produce a computer that could only really run Python. So the Pi comes from Python. So merging together, it is called as Raspberry Pi. This is how the name comes for Raspberry Pi. And move on to what is actually Raspberry Pi. This is a picture of Raspberry Pi 3. I will explain you later about this. It is a credit card sized, affordable, single board computer, or sometimes it is called as programmable PC or a microcomputer. And it was initially developed in UK by Raspberry Pi Foundation in 2009. And this concept of microcomputer was firstly initiated by Eben Upton, who works at Broadcom. Later, it was supported by University of Cambridge Computer Laboratory in Broadcom. So this actually developed for education purpose. And the main motto of this is to promote the study of basic computer science in schools actually, and to develop interest among the kids and adults. So after that, it has breaking the history, and it has been a revolution in the market with over 3 million units were sold. So this is what Raspberry Pi. It is nothing but an affordable credit card sized computer. And also it can be plugged to a computer or monitor or TV. It can also use the standard keyboards and mouse where we can use a laptop and also PC. So it can browse the net and play HD video. It can also interact with the outside world. So about this we will discuss in detail while we are seeing in the hardware portion, because how this can be achieved we can explain through the hardware portions. So we will see later. Next, coming to the specifications. There are various variants of Raspberry Pi are available. So Raspberry Pi 3 and Raspberry Pi 2 and Raspberry Pi 0 model is the first developed model. Later Raspberry Pi 2 and it comes to Raspberry Pi 3. So these are some of the variances that are commonly used. There are other also, but these are considered as main market holders. So the key features are given here. So the Raspberry Pi 3 model, it has 1 GB SDRAM, and Pi 2 1 GB SDRAM, and Pi 0 512 MB SDRAM. Coming to CPU Central Processing Unit, the Quad Cortex A53 is a processor which is used in Pi 3, and the processing speed is about 1.2 GHz. And in 2 also Quad Cortex A53 processor is used, and the processing speed is about 900 MHz. And GPU, this is graphics processing unit, for up to 400 MHz video core 4 is used, and in 2 it is 250 MHz, and it's 0 the same. And Ethernet 10/100, here it is also 10/100, and no Ethernet facility is available in 0 model, that is first model. and wireless 802.11, Bluetooth 4.0, and this feature, the Bluetooth feature, wireless feature, is available only in Pi 3 model, not in Pi 2 and Pi 0. And the video output, you can use HDMI cable in all those three, and GPIO, that is general purpose input and output pins. Totally 40 general purpose input and output pins are available in all these three models. So these are all some famous, specifically used variances in market. So the basic structure of Raspberry Pi. So the figure shows it. In center there is a CPU or GPU. So central processing unit and graphic processing unit. So here it is I/O, input or output, and here it is RAM connector, and here it is USB hub. From that we can use the Ethernet port and as well as USB port for connecting the external USB device, and for Ethernet to connect the LAN network. So this will be the basic architecture of Raspberry Pi. In short, this is similar to a normal PC which you are using. And coming to the features of Raspberry Pi, it is very important that why Raspberry Pi is so important in development of IoT. And here are the answers. So it is more powerful in terms of computation. It has very good computation capability, and it has better memory capability when compared to Arduino. Also, we can able to integrate different types of sensors and actuators using this. So you know that sensors and actuators play an important role in IoT. So with the help of Raspberry Pi, most of the sensors available can be easily able to connect when compared to Arduino. And the processing speed is also high in Raspberry Pi when compared to Arduino. And it is a low cost device. It is easily available in market. It is affordable. As I mentioned in the previous slides, it is very affordable. And it can be easy to access. So anybody can study Raspberry Pi, and you can know what is inside Raspberry Pi. And one major advantage in this is it is used in most of the applications where the processing is required, more processing is required. So for example, imaging sensors and different multimedia sensors. So likewise in these two examples where more processing is required, so automatically the Raspberry Pi comes to the picture when compared to Arduino. So this is why it is oftenly used when compared to Arduino. So these are all about the features of Raspberry Pi. So coming to the end of the session, so we have discussed what is Raspberry Pi, why the name behind Raspberry Pi and its basic architecture, and why the Raspberry Pi is oftenly chosen when compared to Arduino.